Card combinations are the cornerstone of the Lenormand practice. It is what makes Lenormand so special and engaging. But we often get stuck at combinations. That's why in this video, I want to give you a few tips so you can flow with your combinations. Hi everyone, I'm Leila, the Lenormand reader, and I've been reading Lenormand almost exclusively for over 20 years. If you want to master Lenormand, you have come to the right place. Please hit the bell button and subscribe so that you get the notifications about all the videos that I publish about Lenormand. I publish forecasts and tutorials every week. Lenormand's card combinations are just about everything for the practice. Everything begins and ends with card combinations in Lenormand. They are the basis for us to draw meaning out of the cards, to get insights out of our readings, to draw the cards into lines, read them in sentences, and do tableau-style readings like the masterful Grand Tableau. But if anything gets us stuck in Lenormand, it's usually card combinations. They are the reason we get stuck, and they are the reason we can't go beyond 3 card readings. So in this video, I want us to delve into a few tips for how you can draw card combinations and make sense of them in a way that gives you flow and insight from your readings. The one thing to clarify before we get into the different ways we can combine the cards is the technique that underlies all card combinations. And that is the simple technique of combining keywords. So the way this works is you assign a keyword to each of the cards, and then you combine the keywords into a new keyword, and that new keyword is the meaning of the card combination. And voila, it is that simple. Now, I appreciate not all card combinations are so readily interpretable into simple keywords that can then be combined into another keywords, but this keyword combination is very much the essence of the technique, and this is the muscle that you want to train in order to interpret cards together in a spontaneous way. One of the reasons card combinations can seem complicated and maybe a little bit overwhelming is because we go through a number of different keywords for each of the cards, and then we're trying to combine everything together into the card combination meaning. And we're usually not aware that we're doing all of this thinking, and so that's why it can feel confusing and it's not really clear what's going on in our heads. So I suggest that you externalize this process. As a very first step, I want you to try to bring out your thoughts onto paper so that you can break down the process of assigning a keyword to each of the cards and then combining these keywords. So it's really a good thing to write down the keywords that you want to think of for each of the cards and then combine the different keywords together. See which combinations make more sense for what you're doing, for what you're reading, and voila, you've got your card combination meaning. But the idea of writing it down on paper is that it takes away the confusion and it externalizes what's going on in your head. Let's take the example of the anchor and house. Keywords that we associate with the anchor include sticking around, staying put, being solidly rooted in the ground. And keywords that we associate with the house are home, family, the idea of also being solid. So together, the anchor and house very easily suggest staying home. This is a very easy combination, and I love to use it as an example because it's so clear, and a lot of Lenormand combinations are like that. But let's take another example that's maybe not so straightforward. Let's think about the letter and lily. Now the letter we usually associate with news. It can also refer to documents. And the lily is one of those cards that's a little bit all over the place maybe. It can refer to career, our life path, life chapters, and this longer view that we have over our life. So together, I would suggest that the letter and lily can suggest a work offer, maybe some legal or administrative documents that we're looking after, possibly some kind of certification that we're working towards that improves our overall life path and career. When we have several possibilities of card meanings and card combination meanings, we need to choose which one makes the most sense for the question and the context at hand. And this is often the case when we are interpreting the cards, so this is something we need to get good at. It also helps to be flexible and to interpret the cards in a way that makes sense for the readee, for the client, or for the question that we're addressing. Now that we've clarified this essential technique for combining the cards using keywords, let's turn to the different ways we can combine the cards. The simplest way to combine the cards is to have one card qualify another card. In other words, we have one card that tells us more about the first card. Our previous example, the letter and lily, is one such example. The lily tells us what the letter is about. The letter is the card of news, or it represents documents, and the lily tells us that this news or these documents are either work-related or they have to do with legal or administrative matters. And there can be other possibilities depending on your vocabulary or other elements that you associate with the lily. So again, the lily tells us what the news is about. Another frequent way cards qualify other cards is when the man and woman show up. The man and woman are called the significator cards of the Lenormand deck, and they are totally neutral. They just represent a man or a woman, but they take their qualities entirely from surrounding cards. They do not have qualities of their own. Let's take a couple of examples. The man and child can mean a man with children, or it can mean someone who's immature. Of course, if there are additional cards, it also helps. The woman and bear, for example, can represent someone important in our life, an important woman in our life. She can also represent a boss because the bear is often associated with managers in the context of work. The bear is also associated with the mother, and so when we see the bear and woman together, it can represent our mother or possibly somebody else's mother. With negative cards, the bear can suggest someone overbearing, so perhaps this can be someone who's a little bit imposing, who's a little bit burdensome to deal with. So these are the different ways the man and woman can take their qualities from surrounding cards. Another great way to combine the cards is to use the positive, negative, and neutral effects of the Lenormand cards. I've recently done a video about these effects, so you might like to check it out, and we'll recap some concepts here. If we have a positive card with a neutral card, we will probably get an overall positive combination. For example, if we have the letter and sun, it's probably good news, and it's news that most likely answers a wish. The same thing sort of applies when we have a negative and a neutral card. The neutral card takes on the influence of the negative card. So for example, if we have the letter and whip, this probably represents bad news, shocking news, or disappointing news. Positive with positive and negative with negative is pretty straightforward. Each of these pairs reinforce each other. For example, the flowers and sun is a lovely combination where each of the flowers and the sun are bright cards on their own. So when they figure together, they reinforce each other, and we have this lovely combination of success and wish fulfillment. A combination like the key and clover is also really positive. The key is about solutions and the clover is all around success. So together there is this sense of a breakthrough and probably a fair bit of luck. Again, this is another combination of all around success and probably also wish fulfillment. Negative and negative is also obvious. They both reinforce each other like we just said. For example, the scythe and whip. This is probably the most negative combination of the Lenormand deck. Each of the cards of the scythe and the whip are challenging on their own, so when they figure together, they reinforce each other. Now, it's true that the scythe is not always negative on its own. It can be a neutral card suggesting something sudden and a release, which can be positive. But when we have the scythe and whip together, the challenging aspects of the scythe come through, and then they're reinforced by the whip. So I usually take the scythe and whip to represent danger, something going wrong, obviously, conflict and challenge. And so I take this to be a seriously challenging combination. Maybe you have a different way of interpreting them. Let me know in the comments below. I'm certainly curious about your thoughts on this. The fox and snake is also a combination where the cards reinforce each other. They're not as aggressive as the scythe and whip, but they are both very much about deception. And so when they come together, the idea of a deception is really well illustrated, if not altogether confirmed, because each of the fox and snake can point to someone who is not transparent, something negative going on behind our back. And so when the two show up together, this idea is very well reinforced. A positive and negative card together is a little bit trickier. We have to weigh it out and look at how positive a positive card is, how negative the negative card is, to see how they work together. But often enough, the positive card helps to tone down the challenge that is brought up by the negative card. So for example, the Moon and Whip. The Whip is probably the most challenging card of the deck, according to many Lenormand authors, including myself. But the Moon helps soften it a little bit, so it tones down the aggression of the Whip. And similarly, the Moon and Scythe also softens the effects of the Scythe. It is no longer as sharp as it is on its own, or as it would be with a challenging card like the Whip. So the Moon in this context being a really soft and gentle card, even though it is not as powerfully positive as, say, the Clover or the Key or the Sun, it still helps to tone down a little bit the challenge brought up by the Whip or the Scythe, or even both together if they figured in a triplet. But whether a positive card helps tone down a challenging card, again, depends on the strength of the cards, and it also depends on the meaning of the cards. So if we look at a combination like the Snake and Flowers, even though the Flowers is a really positive card and it points to healing and recovery and all sorts of wonderful things associated with flowers in general and the energy of spring, the Snake and Flowers can actually represent someone who is false to our face. It can represent the idea of false compliments and, shallowness in this regard, and outright dishonesty, like someone who's being false in our face. And this can be represented by the Snake and Flowers. So it depends on the cards, and it depends on the meanings of the cards. But overall, the positive, negative, and neutral effects of the cards are really helpful to combine the cards together. They are definitely a good starting point for us to start making sense of the cards when they show up together. The key with the positive, negative, and neutral effects of the cards is to go beyond generalities and to bring out more meaning and more insight from combining them using their effects. Before I wrap up with my last tip about how to combine Lenormand's cards, I want to ask you how you combine the cards. How have you been practicing doing card combinations with Lenormand? I'd really love to hear your tips. It would certainly be insightful to me, and it could help other Lenormand readers on the channel. So please leave me your thoughts and your comments about this. I'm really looking forward to reading them. And the last tip I have for you for combining Lenormand's cards is to weave them into a sequence of events. The combination Anchor and House that we talked about earlier can pass for a sequence of events. The idea here is that we read the Anchor and then the House, and we're not really mixing the two, we're not really fusing their meanings, we're keeping each of them and weaving them into a sentence. So it's really stay home, right? Each of the cards have their keywords retained, and together we come up with the idea of staying home through this combination of the Anchor and House. Let's look at another example, the Ship and Coffin. The Ship is about travel and the Coffin is about ending. And when we see these two cards together, we can really see it as traveling and arriving. The travel part ends with the Coffin. The Ship and Coffin can mean reaching the end of a journey. The Ship represents travel and the Coffin represents an ending, and together these two cards present a sequence of events whereby the travel part represented by the Ship ends with the Coffin, which is about endings. So here again, we have two cards that retain their meaning. Their keywords don't really fuse together to create a new meaning. Instead, they are used together in a sequence. If we had the Road and Coffin, we would have a similar indication, because the Road is a bit like the Ship. It's also about travel, it's about movement, and it is about the end of the road. So we reach the end of the road, and so in this sense as well, this can be a sequence of events whereby we traveled and we arrived at a destination, or we ended the travel in one way or another. With longer lines like the ones we find in a grand tableau, we almost always end up weaving the cards into a sequence of events. We will probably combine some of them and fuse their meanings like we discussed earlier, like the different ways we talked about in this video. But at some point, we're going to have to draw a sequence of events. It's just too many cards to fuse into one meaning, really. And it also works out better for the interpretation because we end up knowing what happened. So we do need a sequence of events, and having longer lines actually helps with giving giving us a lot of meaning because we're able to combine some cards together and also draw a sequence of events. So this is totally normal. We're using different techniques to interpret longer lines, and you will get to this at some point in your practice, and we will go through these techniques at some point in these videos. So stay tuned for them. So now that you have a number of practical ways to combine the cards, I want you to pull out your deck and pull out some cards and start reading them in combinations. Think of the techniques we've discussed in this video or come up with your own and start weaving the cards together. It can be in a sequence or it can be fusing their meanings using keywords. And of course, when you're ready to take your skills to the next level, think about how you would interpret these combinations for the different questions and contexts that you're asking. That way you would have a lot of specific insights that you can offer to yourself or to your clients, depending on who you're reading for. Start slow and write down keywords. Take the trouble to take out pen and paper so that you can externalize your thoughts and make your process more conscious, and in time you'll be able to go through this process entirely in your head. Remember that your goal is to be able to read spontaneously and specifically for the context and question that you are asking about. This way you will have authentic insights that are tailored to the reading and that make really good sense for what you're after. These are different layers that you're using to build your practice, but there is absolutely no reason why you can't have fun doing this. Have fun doing this. Just pull out cards and start reading them and interpreting them, and allow your imagination to expand. There's no need to limit yourself to specific keywords. You can branch out into different keywords. And the different questions and contexts that you are reading for are actually going to help you do that. If you'd like to get started with Lenormand, then have a look at my free resources, including the free starter guide. These you can download right away and get started with Lenormand. And also have a look at my pro guides and the master courses if you're ready for the next level. There's plenty that I offer in there. And if you like this video, then please hit the like button and subscribe and share it with your Lenormand friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to our next videos together.